This is TWiT.
The round Pixel Watch. Now, Lisa, tell me, Google filing a trademark application for the words Pixel Watch, does that confirm this watch, or is it? I mean, maybe they don't want anybody else to call it a Pixel Watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, it doesn't confirm anything yet. They could just be doing it because they don't want anyone else using that branding, although I don't think anyone would, because it would probably make things really confusing. But I don't think it confirms anything, but we've been hearing so many reports that Google, for years, not even just recently, but for years, we've been hearing that Google has been working on its own smartwatch. And by we, I'm talking about the collective news cycle and the rumors and reports that have been floating around for years, not anything that I'm specifically aware of or anything like that. But we have been hearing more reports recently, and one of which, I think one of the most detailed ones came from Insider. I believe it might have been December. I'd have to double check. But that report had a lot of details, actually written by one of my former colleagues, since I used to work there. Hugh Langley, my former colleague at Insider, wrote this great report about how Google was working on a Pixel Watch, and it'll probably have, I think that report mentioned things like the design possibly being round, which wouldn't be very surprising because I think all Android Wear watches are round. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure they all have that round design. Yeah. I haven't seen a square one, but again, I could be misremembering.
Fossil might make one, but I think they're round. Yeah.
But yeah, and that report mentioned a bunch of things that we would expect, like health tracking features and things like that. But I wouldn't be. There's also a bunch of things that you can kind of assume would be on a Google smartwatch. If Google did make a smartwatch, like integration with Fitbit seems pretty logical. The latest version of Wear OS. But I think to me, what would stand out the most is, Google has done a really great thing with its Pixel phones in that it kind of has a lot of software features that make it stand out. And, that's a hard thing to do in, a space like the smartphone market that's already pretty crowded and pretty dominated by Apple and Samsung. But I really like the way Google thinks about, taking care of some of those inconveniences that we experience on our phones sometimes, like, having the Google Assistant screen calls for you and things like that, or estimating wait times, how long you'll be on hold, things like that. So I'm personally hoping that we see some version of that in a Google smartwatch. I don't know what it would be, but like really thinking about how to improve the way we use these devices. And I think that's one thing that we've seen from Google that is pretty unique. So I hope that carries over to the Pixel Watch, if it is in fact real, of course.
One of the things you told me in your article, and I have forgotten this, Google's never made a watch.
Yeah. They don't have their own consumer watch yet. And that's the thing. It's kind of similar to what the smartphone market was like for Google before it came out with its Pixel phones. I mean, it had its Nexus phones for a while, but those weren't really as popular. But Google was still so influential, obviously, because it's the operator of Android. So it has this really huge, presence in the mobile space. But it's also a competitor. It's weird in that it has to partner with the companies that it competes with. And that would be the case for smartwatches too. And I think that would be a challenge for Google, if it does release a Pixel Watch, it will have to, obviously promote that while also working with Samsung, which would then be one of its competitors, and then also differentiate its own watch from Fitbit's watches. So it would, there's a lot going on there. So it could cause some confusion.
It kind of makes sense because Google bought Fitbit that they, they still release Fitbits, but they're not under the Google brand, that they might want to brand a watch, a Pixel Watch. Do you think that this is the Pixel Watch, the one that was left behind in a restaurant?
I actually haven't seen that. I don't know.
It looks like the renders.
It does look like the renders, but who knows if that's even legitimate? Who knows how old it is, or if that was even meant to be something that would even be a final version of it. There's a lot of questions. We won't really know until Google comes out and says it.
Yeah. Whoever left it in the restaurant apparently took the band with them.
Yeah. Maybe there isn't a band.
Oh, maybe it's a pocket
Is a
watch.
pocket watch.
I would get that.
That would be pretty cool.
I would
Yeah.
buy a Google Pocket Watch.
Put a chain on that thing and have a monocle at the end. I'm in.
A Google
Now,
Glass
Leo,
monocle.
Here's the thing, though. Google's Pixel strategy, from the phone to the the Pixel Book, has always been to inspire their partners to make something better. That's what they've been doing.
The first one was the
those
Moto
products.
360, right? And that was a great watch. It was round. I really
Exactly.
liked it. Yeah.
Actually, you had it. You bought it.
Yes.
And then you gave it away, and I got it. I wore it for 6 months.
Is that
until
where
I
that
realized
Oh.
it wasn't really waterproof.
Oh,
Swimming
no.
with it. Yeah. It's kind of a bummer.
No, I really liked
Yeah,
it. The problem is if you are an Apple user, you're going to end up using an Apple Watch.
Correct.
And if you're an Android user, you're probably a Samsung user, so you're going to use a Samsung watch.
Well, I think that's the thing here too, is that there is, the Android space is more fragmented. There is no, just like you kind of mentioned right now, there is no just one answer to the Apple Watch on the Android side of things. There's choice, right? There's Samsung, there's Fitbit, which works across both, there's Fossil. So I think Google has an opportunity, like we were just talking about, to say, hey, this is the ideal Android smartwatch experience. Just like the Pixel has kind of become a blueprint for what Android smartphones could be, a Pixel Watch might do that for Android smartwatches. So I'm very interested to see what Google does with this, especially since it's pretty late to the game at this point compared to the rest of the industry.
A question to you, which is, with the other Pixel products, Google has always tried to fill in something that they feel is missing. Like the products don't get right. So with the phones, it was, look, you need to have better screens and faster processors. With the Chromebooks, it was, you need a premium Chromebook. No more of this $50 to $200 stuff. And they proved that could work. So what does Google think is missing in the Android watch arena? What are the features that it wants to include and inspire the other manufacturers to put in?
Yeah, I think that's what we're hoping to see. I mean, it's hard. I can't answer that question for Google, but what I'm hoping to see is, I guess, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the software, honestly. But again, that's a tricky question because how much of it is going to be specific to the Pixel Watch, if there is a Pixel Watch, and how much of that is just going to be part of whatever the next version of Wear OS is that, would come to Samsung smartwatches and Fossil smartwatches and presumably, other companies that partner with Google. So I think that's going to continue to be the challenge, is again, like having Google say like, hey, this is what we feel like needs to be done better, and we're doing that on our product, versus how much does it also share with the rest of the industry. So I'm curious to see how they strike that balance.
It's a tough job because Apple is so dominant. And then if they're not, like I said, Samsung is. What could you do that Apple and Samsung don't do? Well, good battery life might be something that would
absolutely
help. More than 1 day battery life.
But Fitbit already does that really well too, at least compared to Apple and Samsung. So I hope that Google, gets some inspiration from Fitbit, which they now own. But yeah, I mean, battery life is definitely a big part of that for sure.
There's so much parity. I have both the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 and an Apple Watch Series 6, and there's so much parity between them for activity, heart rate, sleep monitoring. I mean, it's hard to imagine what you're missing, except the things that Apple has historically not been able to do. No one's been able to do things like blood sugar monitoring and blood pressure, both of which are very hard to do. Some watches claim blood pressure. I wonder.
I think a lot of it's going to come down to how they decide to show that information. And I mean, Google, you were asking what can they possibly do differently? What can they bring to this that Apple and Samsung haven't already done yet? One thing that I would personally like to see is, we have so many health metrics now that can be measured on our wrist. And you just mentioned some of the ones that we can't measure yet, which is probably a good thing because, I think I have a lot of opinions on having access to that kind of data from home. And on one side, it's great that you can learn more about your health. On the other side, without the context of a doctor, I kind of worry about having all that information at our fingertips.
Right.
But I honestly think that companies can be doing a lot more to make this data useful to us.
Samsung promised the Google Assistant on their watch. They still haven't done it.
Right.
Maybe that's something. I mean, I guess.
Leo,
I hope so.
words.
I mean, I think there's a big opportunity for, Google to really prove how useful the assistant can be on smartwatches, because theoretically, it's that is the Google Assistant is in so many different products. I don't find myself using it that often on phones, but I use Siri on my Apple Watch all the time because it's such a small screen. I don't really want to type on it. I don't want to really navigate the watch that much using swipes, like for short things and short interactions. Absolutely. But if I want to quickly set a timer or check the weather or something like that, I use Siri all the time for things like that. So I think Google has a big opportunity to really show what the assistant can do on a Pixel Watch.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. We don't have the assistant on any of these watches yet, do we? Does Moto do it? Does Fossil do it?
It is on some smartwatches, I believe, but I do think that it was promised to come to the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, and I don't think it's come out yet. I'd have to double check, but I don't think it has.
In fact, I think Samsung's, if they're not putting it off forever, they're delaying it significantly. All right. I mean, it shows you that Google still has some mind share that people are even talking about this. Somebody in the chat room says, any Google Watch should have the feature that, Google releases it, then kills it a month later. They'd be competing with the Kin and Quibi and CNN Plus for the quickest death.
Quibi, that's what I was trying to think of earlier.
Yes,
good old Quibi.
More recent comparison I could have pulled out than the Kin.
No, I liked the Kin.
No.
I liked it.
I loved that
Palm
Lisa's got
Zion.
one.
The Palm Zion. I don't even know that one.
It was the product that was manufactured, marketed, and then destroyed before it was ever released.
Oh.
That is definitely the shortest product ever. Millions.
No, wait a minute. Microsoft says, hold my beer. Didn't they do a Surface tablet, lightweight Surface tablet?
Oh, the two screen.
Yeah. No, the
Duo.
Courier they never did, but they also did or the Duo. There's a lot of bad products out there, come to think of it. But remember, it was the first thing Satya Nadella did when he took over as CEO. He said, we're not releasing that. And there was a warehouse full of them.
There was
a Surface, not the Mini. I can't remember what it was called, but it was kind of...
Oh, what about the 3Com Audrey?
Oh, the Audrey, which is the kitchen computer.
That's right.
For all you gals who like to work in the kitchen, you'll love the Audrey kitchen computer. That was a long time ago. That was ancient history.
Yeah, we're digging back now.
Would they announce it? So Google I/O is coming up. It's a weird it's not exactly hybrid, slightly hybrid event, mostly online, but there'll be a few people at the event, mostly developers and Google employees. Would that be where they would announce it? Prosser, who said they would announce it in May, is now backtracking and saying he's one of the big Google Pixel rumor guys. He actually does Apple rumors too. He's now saying they'll show it or talk about it at Google I/O, but won't release it till October. That seems like a stupid plan.
No, I'm pretty sure that Google is just going to release another messaging app.
Yeah. That's the killer. There it is, the killer app for the Pixel Watch. Messaging. Brilliant. Because you've always trusted Google with your messages. All right, maybe not.